one of the priorities that the school board should address.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Good morning again, Nick. Let's get back to some money.
Okay.
Many people are saying that if we cut down on the non-teaching employees, that would free up some money in the system, and that money could be placed in the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about that?
Well, you're talking about cutting jobs. And first of all, I'm very passionate about education, and I know that auxiliary services within a school system are very vital to the success of the daily operation and contribute to student success. In a perfect situation, if possible, I think it would be great that every teacher, where their students are not performing, would have an instructional tutor or aide to assist them in working towards meeting gains to improve learning with students who are struggling or at risk or not passing FCAT. I know that funds have been cut. I know there have been budget cuts. I know there have been positions cut. Do I think that it's wise? No. When we start cutting programs and auxiliary services from schools, it's a detrimental service to the school community at large.
That really wasn't my question. My question specifically was, if you have $1 and you have to divide that dollar between the teaching people and the non-teaching people, and the teaching people are not getting enough of that dollar to be successful, what would you do?
Well, I know from my experience still, funds that are brought into a building, it still is up to the discretion of the building principal how they dictate those funds to go. And if you want to look at it as far as $1, that classroom teacher and that support staff is just as vital. So I would have to say that I would take that $1 and split it amongst them so that they could still be functioning as a unit and be productive within that teaching staff to provide its best and do the best job that they could given that resource.
So you wouldn't cut?
I wouldn't cut, no.
One more question, Nick. You made the statement that Dr. Burke is doing a fine job. How did you come to that conclusion?
Well, you know, again, I know that he's newly hired. I know that he's still in what we would probably call the honeymoon stage. And I know that he has an impeccable record as far as working with students with literacy concerns and students at risk, both with language and math. However, I don't know firsthand what the board is thinking as far as, or the research committee as far as selecting why they chose him over anyone else. But my perception, both as being in the classroom in Lee County and being actively engaged in the school improvement committee, I don't see where he's not meeting the needs and the goals of the school system, and I don't see where there's any major problems. The only thing, as I mentioned earlier, and it was probably an unfortunate situation, and I'm sure he realizes it now, that you do not, as a superintendent, make a decision without your board, especially with capital project funds.
Well, with regard to that, in terms of decision making, because there are different styles that, I've seen numerous superintendents over the years, And the board is supposed to be a policy-making group, but the superintendent ultimately has to be the decision maker and obviously accept the consequences or accolades as it comes to those decisions. You as a school board member, how would you manage your superintendent? Are you a micromanager? Are you more laissez-faire? Tell us a little bit about how you would work with your superintendent.
Well, I have more of a micromanagement. I can do many different tasks at the same time. I think what's important is that in any working relationship, you have to be in agreement. You know, in order to accomplish anything, you can't have a hostile situation, so you have to be in agreement with your goals and objectives, and you have to have a clear plan, and you have to work collaboratively together and strive to try to meet those goals as best you can as a board, as a team.
But that's not happening now, so how would you change that?
It's not happening. It's not happening?
I don't think it is.
Well, I know that while I've been here, I have seen now this will be the third round of changes in school board staff. In my being here, and I've seen now 3 superintendents. Well, you really want me to stick my neck out and tell you what I really think? If it's not working, and that board feels that he's not in agreement with them, they have the right, the fiduciary right, to fire him if they don't like him, if he isn't working up to their expectation. Is that what you're asking me?
No, I mean, he asked the question, and I just, my personal opinion is, you were talking about in terms of having to work collaboratively and having to work as a unit. I don't see that happening. I think there's bands of that happening, and my question was, you know, how would you work to accomplish that style that you're describing, that cooperative style where...
I think that we all know in both our personal and professional lives that, and even sitting here at this committee, in this committee room this morning, that there are different perceptions and philosophies, and we're not always going to agree. But one thing you all don't know about me is that I've been able to work with, in a variety of different capacities, with a variety of different superintendents and building leaders and staff, and not always agree with them, but be able to be objective and, given the task, function to come to a consensus and a resolution to accomplish something. As true professionals, whatever cognitive dissonance is amongst them and your perception of whether it's working or not, they should still be able to be objective and put their differences aside and still accomplish the task of meeting the daily operations of major large school corporations such as the Lee County Schools, and keep in mind the major focus is to provide the best learning experiences for the school students of Lee County. And if they can't, then they shouldn't be on that board. And if they're the superintendent, then they shouldn't be the superintendent. It's as simple as that.
Mr. Kellen, we are at the end of our interview. I want to thank you very much for your time. Any final words before we conclude?
I want to thank you for this opportunity, and I look forward to any other opportunities to speak with you and share with you my thoughts and feelings about what I consider to be one of the finest school systems in the state of Florida. And again, there's no perfect